One, before we start our regular review session, we have a special meeting of the City Planning Commission. Today is Monday, July 21st, 2014, and a quorum is present. I will now call the roll. Chairman Weisbrod.
Here.
Vice Chair Knuckles.
Here.
Commissioner Battaglia.
Here.
Commissioner Besser.
Here.
Commissioner Cantor.
Here.
Commissioner Cerullo.
Here.
Commissioner De La Uz. Commissioner Del Toro.
Here.
Commissioner Dwett.
Here.
Commissioner Edie. Commissioner Levin.
Here.
Commissioner Marin.
Here.
Once again, a quorum is present. Let's turn to page 1 of the calendar. Borough of Queens, calendar number 1, CD5, C140111ZMQ, in the matter of an application for an amendment of the zoning map concerning Woodward Avenue rezoning. For a favorable report as modified on calendar number 1. Chairman Weisbrod.
I just want to note that the application before us on Woodward Avenue provided the opportunity for a really thoughtful and lively public hearing about how best to guide new development in mixed use and light industrial settings, and how to address the issue also in an area with an emerging housing marketplace. This application represents an opportunity to remove the burden of nonconformance from properties containing existing residential uses that constitute nearly 90% of the lots within the proposed rezoning area, and will also facilitate the redevelopment of a site that has been underutilized and problematic for more than 2 decades. The applicant's commitment to provide 8 units of permanent affordable housing and the Commission's modification of the commercial overlay zoning to allow for a broader range of business uses to be located in the proposed development go a long way, I think, to addressing the concerns that were raised by some at the Commission's hearing. And I'm also very pleased that the applicant has indicated a commitment to a follow-up action to further increase the number of affordable units through an inclusionary housing program. And I really want to just thank my fellow commissioners for very thoughtful questions and a very interesting discussion about these issues and how best to balance the need for housing and the need for jobs and assuring the continuation of our industrial base. And with that, I am very happy to vote aye.
Vice Chairman Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Battaglia.
I want to start by thanking Chair Weisbrod for your leadership on this. I know you took your own personal tour of the site, and since our certification in February, I did say, and I do feel this rezoning is absolutely necessary for this site and appropriate. First of all, it brings, as the chairman mentioned, 80% of the residential uses into conformance. Secondly, the site itself and the surrounding area the rezoning area haven't been utilized for manufacturing for decades, as was mentioned, and it, in my view, represents in its current state an example of urban life, which needs to be done away with. I am confident, I am happy about the units that the applicant is willing to commit even before follow-up action for affordable housing. I estimate that with that follow-up action, approximately 30% of the units will be affordable, 50% of which will go to the local community, which is needed and deserved, and I am very pleased to vote yes.
Commissioner Besser.
Yes.
Commissioner Cantor.
Mr. Chairman, on my behalf as well as the borough residents, we thank you for your efforts to improve the city tremendously over what it was. It's turning out to be almost a win-win, and hopefully at the end of the day, it will be a total win-win. And we thank you again, and I'm grateful for yes.
Commissioner Cerullo.
Yes.
Commissioner Del Toro.
Yes.
Commissioner Dwett.
Yes.
Commissioner Edie.
Yes.
Commissioner Levin.
Yes.
Commissioner Marin.
Yes.
A favorable report is adopted. A favorable report as modified has been adopted on calendar number 1. Let's now turn to the regular review session. Item number 1, page 1, is proposed acquisition of property and permanent easements to facilitate a stormwater drainage system for the neighborhood of Travis in Staten Island. This is item number 1, and our presenter is Kirsty.
Madam Secretary, just before Christie starts, let me just, one thing I forgot to mention, but should be underscored with respect to the Woodward Avenue action is the really excellent work on the part of the Queens Borough Office, and particularly John Young, who really did help fashion what I think many of you and I also agree is an extremely good outcome and a win-win, as Mr. Cantor mentioned. Thank you. Sorry, Christie.
It's all right. Good afternoon, Commissioners. In order to implement a proposed stormwater drainage plan for the Travis area of Staten Island and to alleviate flooding, the New York City Department of Environmental Protection and Citywide Administrative Services seek the acquisition of private property, Block 2776, Lot 12, and the acquisition of 2 permanent easements on portions of 2 privately held properties, Block 2772, Lot 36 and 37. The project area is located in the southwestern part of Travis in Staten Island's Community District 2. The area is generally bounded by Victory Boulevard to the south, Meredith Avenue and Meredith Woods Park to the north, the West Shore Expressway and vacant wetlands to the west. The project area is currently zoned R32 and M11. The land uses in the surrounding area include attached and detached residences along Cannon Avenue to the south and east, natural parkland to the north, and vacant wetland areas along the West Shore Expressway to the west. The proposed acquisition would facilitate construction of a stormwater drainage system for the Travis area of Staten Island. Most of the work would occur in the bed of streets. The proposed project involves the installation of new stormwater collection sewers and 2 new storm sewer outfalls. One outfall would have a Bluebelt-style best management practice system to attenuate stormwater runoff, velocities, and capture sediments. The proposed BMP would include grading and ecological plantings along with the drainage connection to an existing tidal creek that's downstream of the existing BMP, of the proposed BMP. So this site of the proposed BMP is primarily privately owned land that is proposed for acquisition. In addition, the acquisition of easements on portions of 2 adjacent properties totaling 2,700 square feet of private property is necessary to complete the stormwater management system. These 2 properties are shown on the map behind me. They are in the yards of 2 residentially zoned properties at the end of Burke Avenue and Price's Lane, about a block south of the Cannon Avenue BMP. This area is predominantly R32 and is already developed with single-family detached homes. Acquisition of easements over these 2 parcels would bridge a gap between 2 dead-end streets and allow the storm sewer to be continuous from Victory Boulevard up Burke Avenue, across the easements, up Price's Lane to Cannon Avenue and to the proposed BMP. This proposed acquisition site to the north is vacant freshwater and tidal wetland and is vegetated with common reed. As shown in the upper photograph. The flag-shaped lot has 40 feet of frontage on Cannon Avenue and is approximately 33,733 square feet. It's zoned primarily M11 to the north with a portion zoned R32. The 2 proposed storm sewer easement sites are contiguous and, as said before, they're located between 2 dead-end streets, shown here in the aerial, and they are zoned R32, surrounded by attached and detached residences. First, the proposed easement on Burke Avenue, which is the lot to the southwest, is a portion of the front yard of a developed single-family detached residence. It's 1,550 square feet in area, and is just in the open landscaped yard. The second parcel is a freestanding residentially zoned lot not associated with any residence, and it is 1,150 square feet in area, the easement, and the width of the total easement would be about 30 feet across and 90 feet long. So the action necessary to facilitate the project is acquisition of the private property on Cannon Ave and acquisition of easements on these two parcels at Burke and Price's Lane. The site of the proposed acquisitions are vacant and unimproved, and the site of the proposed easements are in residential yards. No structures would be impacted, and only side and front yard landscaping would be affected. All disturbed areas would be replaced in kind.
Thank you, Christie. Questions? Mr. Eady.
Thank you. Just a quick question regarding the easement on the lot associated with the house. Will there be any further restrictions on the future use of that lot, or that portion of the lot going forward?
Because it's in a yard, the only restriction is planting, no structures and no trees.
No trees. Okay, thank you.
Ms. Levin.
I guess perhaps related to that, do we know that, are the property owners amenable to this transaction? Or are we talking condemnation here?
The process is that associated with the disposition application, or an acquisition application, excuse me, there are two things. The formal process is they get notification as when this is certified, but in addition, we've heard from the DDC that they will be notifying the property owners in the very near future that this is coming.
Okay, so they've not yet been contacted about this?
Correct.
Okay, and do we know who owns the larger BMP site?
Yes, it's listed in the attachments to the briefing sheet. It's a individual.
I missed it, okay. Never mind,
okay.
It'll come back.
Yes,
Thank you.
House on that, right? It's just a freestanding lot.
Yeah,
right, and that lot has no
Undeveloped,
structure. Yeah.
thank you.
Mr. Cirillo.
Just a question I thought of, if, at the end of this process, given the fact that there's an expectation that a blue belt-like infrastructure will be created, which I'm assuming we're not seeing it there, will I know that DEP will need access to that for maintenance and other things that they need to do. At least that's true in real blue belt situations. Where, do we know where that access will be? Will it be from the front where the little, sort of the, at the street, on the street, or will it come from some other location? I just wonder if what will remain undisturbed versus disturbed. So are we creating a driveway? Do we know that at all? Will there be a driveway in from the street? Where do we see this little piece off right now, the handle, we'll call it the handle of this shape? Or will it be from another point?
I would like to ask the DEP and get back to you. Yeah.
I know we're at the beginning of this process, but I just wondered if we knew that. I didn't think to ask that question. Thank you.
Mr. Knuckles.
Kirsty, as a part of the notification process, the homeowners, the impacted homeowners, they are notified individually or as a part of this ULURP process, hopefully the former and not the latter.
I'm looking to my associate
As
for
part
help
of
with
this
that
process,
answer.
all of the public hearings of the city planning, the various public hearings, community board, the borough president holds one, city planning commission, each individual property owner is notified of our hearings going forward.
And that includes the certification?
Yes.
Any other questions? Certified.
Thank you. Let's now move to item number 2, page 17. It's a Staten Island pre-hearing application with respect to a proposed disposition of city-owned property to facilitate an easement for a storm sewer infrastructure connection within the neighborhood of Stapleton along the Staten Island waterfront. And our presenter is also Kirsty. That's item number 2, page 17.
This application is back post-referral. The Community Board won, and the Staten Island Borough President recommended approval unanimously. The application by the Small Business Services in the New York City EDC seeks approval of the disposition of approximately 18,000 square feet of city-owned property for a storm sewer easement. The storm sewer easement would allow the developer to construct and maintain storm sewer infrastructure for Phase 1 of a previously approved development on the Stapleton waterfront. The Stapleton waterfront is just south of St. George on the north shore of the Staten Island and Community Board 1. And the purpose of the proposed easements would be to connect new storm sewer runoff drainage lines from the development site to existing outfall pipes located below grade on adjacent city-owned land. I'm going to show you a rendering of the proposed development to quickly illustrate the location of the easement and then go into more technical drawings. I'm going to mention that the development of the Stapleton waterfront is a product of the development of the 2006 Special Stapleton Waterfront District, which created a framework for development as of right that provides waterfront public access, retail on the ground floor, 50-foot height limit, a large residential component in an area immediately east of the town of Stapleton in the North Shore of Staten Island. First, I'll show you the existing conditions. The Stapleton waterfront is almost a mile of waterfront, and the two central portions are sites B2 and B3, which have been the subject of an RFP, and as a result, a developer, Homeport LLC, was selected and in 2011 obtained ownership of the site in order to go forward with development of 950 units of residential, 40,000 square feet of retail, and this site plan shows two phases of that development. So back to the easement, a follow-up action to the 2006 actions was the requirement to dispose of an easement so that a storm sewer system could be placed in front of this development to collect stormwater. And because the waterfront is city-owned land, that requires this action. So here in pink, you see a T-shaped area. This is where the storm sewer easement would occur, 18,000 square feet. And it's ordered the developer would build their own storm sewers, and the purpose is to connect with an existing outfall that is at this location on the waterfront. As you can see, surrounding land uses are predominantly industrial, one-story buildings, open storage and parking, and the Staten Island Railroad. And much of the land within the former Navy home port is now vacant land and building, which is to be redeveloped. Now, the proposed development sites affected by the disposition, as I mentioned before, are sites B2 and B3. B2 and B3. Something called the Waterfront Loop Road, which will go around the new development between the development and the Waterfront Esplanade, and portions of the Waterfront Esplanade itself. This Esplanade open space will not be map park, but will remain within the jurisdiction of the Department of Small Business Services, and it will be maintained by the Department of Parks. The T-shaped easement, the developer proposed to install its proposed storm discharge drainage pipe within that easement and connect it to the existing outfall pipe. And the system will treat stormwater, which is rainwater, and discharge it into Upper New York Bay. So the disposition of this easement will permit the installation of the connecting storm sewer lines, the use of the outfall pipe under the Esplanade area, and an associated right of access for maintenance, repair, and replacement.
Questions? Christy, who's going to be here to testify for the various applicants tomorrow, Wednesday? Are they going to,
Yes, I can give you
Homeport
Yes,
Gonna be
the
here?
principal of Homehorde LLC will be here. That's the developer of the site. Representatives from EDC will be here. Small Business Services, EDC, I can convey the language that they are co-applicant, but that EDC can explain that they don't need to be present because EDC is pretty much managing this going forward.
And this will have some affordability associated with it?
Yes, at referral, we had some facts on the affordability. Of the 950 units, there's a portion will be built in Phase 1. Phase 1 is the area behind it's this building on the left, as defined by this black line. Phase 1, I'll tell you the total number of units, 571. The number of affordable units pursuant to a 421A plan is 115 affordable units, 18 of which are 40% AMI, and 97 of which are 50% AMI.
And is there a commitment that those units be permanently affordable?
It is the standard commitment for 20 years,
But not permanently?
correct? In the past few days, we've had conversations at a high level with EDC, and we are told that the property was sold in 2011 and that there will be opportunities for a more aggressive affordable housing program in future phases of the development of the Stapleton waterfront, which will be up to more than 1,000 additional units over time.
Any other questions? Okay. See you Wednesday.
Thanks, Kiersey. Let's now move to item number 3, page 28, proposed city map amendment to facilitate the nullification of an existing encroachment in the bed of a map street along Dyckman Street in Brooklyn. This is item number 3, page 28, a Brooklyn pre-hearing application, and our presenter is Philip.
Good afternoon. Returning for pre-hearing review is an application by a private applicant, the Dyckman Realty Corporation, seeking an amendment to the city map. As you may recall, the proposed action seeks the elimination, discontinuance, closing, and related disposition of a portion of Dyckman Street between Ferris Street and Conover Street in the Red Hook area of Brooklyn Community District 6. The subject portion of Dyckman Street is city-owned, mapped to a width of 60 feet, and is open to one-way northwesterly bound traffic. It is a lightly traveled local street with little to no foot traffic. The applicant's property is occupied by a 1- and 2-story commercial warehouse building used to house the applicant's HVAC contractor business. Prior to the applicant's ownership of the premises, the 25-foot wide building was constructed such that its front portion encroaches onto the street right-of-way by approximately 1 foot. Because of this encroachment, a certificate of occupancy cannot be issued for the building. This application would facilitate the issuance of a certificate of occupancy by allowing the applicant to acquire this small portion of street bed, thereby nullifying the encroachment. There will be no physical changes to the Dyckman Street travelway or sidewalk, and the total area of mapped street bed to be eliminated and acquired by the applicant is approximately 18 square feet. The community board voted 34 in favor with 0 opposed and 3 abstentions to approve the application, and the borough president's office also recommended approval of the application.
Questions? Mr. Knuckles?
So has the building been vacant? What's the state of the occupancy,
It's-
since it has no C of O?
It's occupied, and he's running his business out of there,
Oh, it is?
yes.
Okay.
Ms. Levin?
And do we have an understanding of how this happened?
No, we don't, but the applicant's representative will be here on Wednesday. I know this started out at the BSA. He was trying to,
Okay.
and-
Yeah, be interesting to know if this is a surveyor's mistake or,
Right. Yeah, it's interesting to see how they even, discovered it. So.
yeah, maybe that's the lead question.
Any other questions? Thanks.
Thanks, Philip. Let's now move to item number 4, page 39, proposed renewal of a previously approved City Planning Commission special permit to facilitate a public parking garage at 886 Day Hill Road in Brooklyn. That's item number 4, page 39. Our presenter is Syed.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. The applicant requests first renewal of a special permit for a public parking garage with a maximum capacity of 259 parking spaces. The project is located at 886 Day Hill Road in the Mapleton neighborhood of Brooklyn Community District 12. The special permit was approved by the City Planning Commission on January 28, 2008. In addition to the special permit, there was another land use action, an application to rezone the project site from R5 and M11 districts to a C45X district. These actions facilitate a proposed 10-story mixed-use development with an underground public parking garage. The underground parking garage approved through the special permit would be 99,586 square feet in size. The cellar and subcellar levels of the garage would accommodate a maximum of 259 parking spaces. Out of 259 parking spaces, 90 spaces would be accessory to residential uses in the mixed-use building above. The parking garage would have 2 separate access points. They're shown here, highlighted here, both on 80 feet wide streets. Residents of the mixed-use building would access the garage from 19th Avenue, an 80-foot wide street. All other vehicles using the public portion of the parking garage would use Avenue I, also a wide street. Parking garage would provide the required 13 reservoir parking spaces. In addition to the commercial parking garage, the applicant proposes a mixed-use development above the garage. Above the garage, that would include a 10-story building with 179 dwelling units and 3,500 square feet of ground floor commercial space. The project site is an irregular site. It is an interior lot bounded by Avenue I and Day Hill Road to the south, a shopping center and Long Island Railroad right-of-way to the east, 19th Avenue to the north, and two-story row houses fronting on 50th Street to the west. The project site is approximately 64,600 square feet in area and is currently vacant. The surrounding area is zoned for residential and light manufacturing uses. Immediately to the north of the site is Long Island Railroad right-of-way and a shopping center in an M11 district. The shopping center contains a large supermarket with several small retail stores. The rest of the surrounding neighborhood, except McDonald Avenue corridor, is zoned R5 and R31 and is predominantly developed with 2- and 3-story row houses and community facility uses. The application was referred to Community Board 12 for comment, and we have not received any comments from them. Market conditions have prevented the mixed-use development to move forward, and the applicant is seeking first 3-year renewal of the special permit. The applicant states in their discussion of findings that there has been no unanticipated large development in the area except 2 minor BSA use variances granted for the conversion of 2 residential properties into houses of worship. Neither the project site nor the proposed site plan or its context has changed, and the project continues to meet all the findings required by the original grants of the special permit. A special permit granted by the City Planning Commission may be renewed, provided that the Commission finds that the facts upon which the special permit was granted have not substantially changed. Applicant's statement of findings is in the briefing package. Any questions?
Thank you, Syed. Any questions? Ms. Levin?
Yes, I see from the report of the previous commission action that there were a number of commitments that the applicant made in the course of the review process. Are all of those commitments being maintained? I think the principal one is about the building height, which is reflected as being still part of the design, but there are also commitments about space being made available in the parking garage and traffic studies and so forth. Those all
Yes.
remain in place?
They are. Applicant signed a restrictive DAC.
Oh, they did?
And
Okay.
incorporated all those, conditions in that DAC prior to the vote by the Borough President's office.
Good.
And then the Borough President's recommendations incorporated similar conditions and approved the project.
Good, so it's more than just the nice words that get said at a planning commission meeting
Yes,
that binds them. Good, that's good to hear.
thank you.
Remarkably. Any other questions? Okay, by a show of hands, assent to send a letter of approval to DOB? Thank you, Syed.
Syed also has our next item. Our next item is item number 5, page 70. 2 renewals of a previously approved City Planning Commission special permit to facilitate a mixed-use development along the waterfront in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. That's item number 5, page 70.
The applicant, Rector Highland Corporation, is requesting 2 renewals of a previously approved special permit adopted by the City Council on June 13, 2006. The first renewal application was filed on June 2, 2010, to renew the special permit for a period of 3 years up to June 13, 2013. The second renewal application was filed on June 10, 2013, to renew the special permit for another 3 years up to June 13, 2016. In addition to the special permit, there were 2 other land use applications. A zoning map amendment for the applicant's site to rezone it from M31 and C43 districts to R73 district with C24 commercial overlays along 10th Avenue. And the second action was a chairperson certification for the site. These actions facilitate the proposed mixed-use development of 450 dwelling units and 26,413 square feet of neighborhood retail in 2 residential towers on the project site. Cadam Winery development would also take advantage of the inclusionary housing program, which was mapped on the site at the same time as the department was approving the special permit, and provide 90 units of permanently affordable housing. The affordable units would be on site, interspersed in both residential towers, and their placement in the development would comply with the guidelines of the inclusionary housing program. The previously approved special permit was granted due to the site-specific conditions. The site constraints included an irregular shape and shoreline, which you can see here. The site constraints included an irregular shape and shoreline, an existing sewer easement right here on the site, and the zoning requirements of providing a visual corridor and an upland connection. The irregular shape of the site and the existence of a sewer easement presented constraints to the configuration of location of buildings, particularly on the smaller portion, northern half of the site. The applicant sought and was granted several height and bulk modification waivers in order to produce a better site plan. The special permit waivers provided relief from the requirements of maximum building height, maximum 8,100 square feet floor plate size, required setbacks on narrow streets and shore public walkway, and maximum length of the wall facing the shoreline. The special permit waivers received by the applicant allowed the relocation of the bulk away from the narrow Kent Street and on each side of the upland connection, thus creating a site plan with greater light and air and better distribution of density on the irregular site. The commission found that the modification of the design standards would result in a design that is functionally equal or superior to the design prescribed by the strict adherence to the provisions of the zoning. The proposed residential development approved through the land use actions and the special permit consists of approximately 450 dwelling units with 90 units of affordable housing. The project also provides 26,400 square feet of ground floor retail space and a garage with 226 accessory parking spaces. The proposed development would have the required 40-foot wide shore public walkway, the visual corridor, and an upland connection. The Cadam Winery is located on the East River waterfront, just south of the Williamsburg Bridge. The project site is currently occupied by 3 buildings, which are now used by film studios as a film production facility, offices, and a cafeteria. The surrounding area to the east is primarily developed with medium-density residential and commercial uses, ranging from 3-story walk-ups to 10-story multifamily residential buildings. The properties to the north of the Cadam site are occupied by a restaurant, a decast machine shop, and a DOT maintenance facility zoned C43 and M31. Just south of the Cadam site is Schaefer Landing, a 350-unit development with ground floor commercial space. Schaefer Landing provides a publicly accessible waterfront esplanade and an upland connection, which would be connected to the proposed Cadam Winery esplanade when it is developed. South of Schaefer Landing is the Rose Plaza site. The Rose Plaza development has not yet been developed, but would include approximately 800 units of housing with 160 units of affordable housing. The project would also have 29,000 square feet of commercial and community facility space and 33,188 square feet of public open space along the East River waterfront. Community Board 1 held a public hearing on the 2 renewal applications, and their land use committee unanimously approved both applications. Market conditions have prevented the mixed-use development to move forward, and the applicant is seeking renewal of the special permit. The applicant states in their discussion of findings that there has been no unanticipated development in the area. Neither the project site nor the proposed site plan or its context has changed, and the project continues to meet all the findings required by the original grants of the special permit. Applicant's statement of findings is in the briefing package.
Thank you, Syed. Questions? Ms. Battaglia.
So Syed, you're the historical person, I see. All these ancient zonings and reauthorization of the special permits and what have you. And I just want to say, I know the community would welcome this when it's finally built, and I hope it's built in the next 3 years, because those 90 affordable units will go a long way in that community. Did I hear you say that the waterfront esplanade would be contiguous from Schaefer Landing up through Kenham?
Yes,
Now,
it will.
isn't there private property in between that? That's a catering hall that I
The
thought went right up to the waterfront.
At present, the Cadam Winery site has 3 buildings, and they do go up to the waterfront, but when it would be developed, there would be a 40-foot wide waterfront esplanade, and it is shown here. And it will connect to the Schaefer Landing Esplanade. And the Rose Plaza, when it is developed, they will be connected to Schaefer too. So there will be a contiguous
That's great.
waterfront esplanade along the three developments.
Thank you.
Ms. Levin?
Syed, the briefing packet indicates that at least a portion of the space is currently being used as a film production facility, and I gather from the earlier report, they must have moved in after the rezoning. So my question is whether there's a relocation plan for them if the development gets off the ground. This kind of activity is something that we've like to
I guess they
nurture
would
in that
have to.
location.
They would have to, relocate these people, or these properties have to be vacated for this special permit.
Right. But so you have no
development.
further
I have no.
indication about the status of that
No.
tenancy? Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, again, by a show of hands, assent to send this to the Buildings Department with our approval? Agreed. Thank you, Syed.
Let's now move to item number 6, page 112. It's a proposed acquisition of temporary easements to facilitate the rehabilitation of the Roosevelt Avenue Bridge in Queens. It's a Queens pre-hearing application back from Community Board and Borough President Review. This is item number 6, page 112. Now, presenter is Hae Kyung.
Hi. This is an acquisition requested of 10 temporary easements by DOT and DCAS for the rehabilitation of the Roosevelt Avenue Bridge over the Flushing River. It was certified May 19th. It's coming back to CPC for pre-hearing. The 10 temporary easements would facilitate the long-term repair the bridge requires. All community boards 3, 4, and 7 voted in favor. Community board 3 approved with the condition that they would be informed of all the progress. The BP recommendation will come in tonight. The borough board meeting votes tonight.
That's it?
Yes. Yes.
Questions?
Why so straightforward?
What happened?
It's, yeah.
You don't have to answer.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Hae Kyung.
Water under the bridge. Let's now move to item number 7, page 137, proposed disposition of 12 city-owned properties within Community District 12 in Queens. Now, our presenter is Stephen. It's also a Queens pre-hearing application. That's item number 7, page 137.
Good afternoon, Chairman Weisbrod and Commissioners. The Department of Citywide Administrative Services, or DCAS, seeks disposition approval for 12 properties in various locations, all in Queens Community Board 12. DCAS intends to dispose of these properties pursuant to zoning. One of the properties contains a one-story former Department of Health and Mental Hygiene building in an R41 zoning district in Jamaica. This is Site A. The other 11 vacant lots were acquired through the New York City Interim tax foreclosure process and are all less than 2,200 square feet in area, but most are significantly less than this, as small as 16 square feet. DCAS has several options for disposition in these types of cases. They can engage in a long-term lease, sell through public auction, or in the case of sliver lots, access ways, and interior lots, they have the right to sell to adjacent property owners when they're these smaller sliver undevelopable properties. And it's my understanding that DCAS intends to dispose of the former Department of Health and Mental Hygiene building through public auction, and the majority of the rest they will attempt to sell through the sale away program to adjacent property owners. The filed application originally sought disposition approval for 14 properties. but subsequent to certification, DCAS revised the application on June 23rd to eliminate 2 lots from the proposed disposition. These are lots M and N. These are block 13038, lot 146, site M, and block 13039, lot 23, site N. These are both located within the mapped but unconstructed portion of 141st Street. So rather than seek disposition approval for these properties, DCAS will transfer them to the Department of Transportation. The application was certified on March 31st. The Community Board held a public hearing on May 21st, and by a vote of 32 in favor, 0 opposed, and 2 abstaining, they recommended approval. The Borough President held a public hearing on June 5th and has also recommended approval. The City Planning Commission public hearing is Wednesday, July 23rd.
I think there'll be a lot of people here.
I don't expect anyone from the Community Board to show up, but we have a representative from DCAS here, and he will definitely represent.
Any questions to Stephen? Ms. Levin?
Well, I don't want to waste DCAS's trip on Wednesday, so I have a question. Maybe they could. The briefing package indicates that Site E, which is 1,500 square feet, is being leased on a month-to-month basis for use as accessory parking. And I'd be curious to know about the nature of that accessory parking. Is it required for somebody else, or how many cars, and what's the effect on somebody else of this action?
Okay. It's my understanding that it is being leased for parking for requirement for another purpose, but Chris Grove from DCAS can elaborate on that on Wednesday.
Ms. Battaglia?
This question is probably also going to be answered on Wednesday, but perhaps you can. I'm curious to know the success rate of the sale of these smaller than small slivers. Do we know? Do the nearby property owners purchase them? Because I would imagine they purchase them, they really don't need the area, their taxes go up, however slightly. Who needs it?
So in these circumstances, DCAS seeks disposition approval. And so for this application, they started the application for Site A with the developable Lot A, and looked through their inventory and found that they have these other smaller properties. So they bundled them in the same application, and sometimes these properties sell, other times they don't, but Chris Grove from DCAS can elaborate a little bit more on that on Wednesday.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Stephen? We'll see you Wednesday, and be prepared. Okay.
Okay, let's now move on to item number 8. Proposed modification to a special permit and restrictive declaration to facilitate modifications to the interim parking plan for a proposed commercial development in St. George, Staten Island. And our presenter is Jen, and she's going to walk us through a response which I believe you likely received earlier today, a signed response from the applicant.
Good afternoon. I'm getting over a small cold, so I apologize if I have a bit of a cough. The St. George Outlet Development proposes a modification to the special permit and a modification to the restrictive deck that were approved as part of the CPC and City Council approvals on October 30th, 2013 as part of the St. George waterfront development. The actions relate to the special permit that was approved for Parcel 2, which is currently a 786-space public parking lot used by commuters and Richmond County Ballpark patrons. And the applicant is required to retain an equivalent amount of parking on site, both during construction and in the final development. The construction is expected to take 3 years. The layouts and locations of the interim lots, as well as the route for the proposed shuttle, were described in an interim parking plan which was approved by the CPC as an attachment to the restrictive declaration. As was explained at the July 7th review session, the applicant seeks to modify the interim parking plan by adding a 5th off-site interim public parking lot and reducing the parking at the 4 previously approved lots, and permitting the phasing of the interim parking, allowing for a portion of the ferry terminal commuter parking to remain open during some of the construction. The interim parking plan to which the applicant has committed involves 4 temporary parking lots to be located within approximately 1.5 miles of the development site. The proposed modified parking plan would add a fifth 275-space lot, which is shown on the red dot, at 355 Front Street, south of Thompson Street, and is also within about 1.5 miles of the development site. The commission had several questions at the July 7th review session regarding the sufficiency of the shuttle service and the reasons for pursuing the modification, and questioned whether the addition of adding the fifth lot and the lost attended parking would result in improved conditions for commuters. The applicant's response is included in a letter in your package today and says the following. In response, and I summarize, in response to the CPC and Community Board concerns, the applicant has agreed to provide one additional shuttle to reduce travel times. As currently proposed, the shuttle route would remain the same, but would be serviced by 2 shuttles. This would reduce the wait time between shuttles by half, from 42 to 21 minutes. The applicant also explains a management plan to encourage commuter parking at the closest lots. The New York Wheel site, which was also approved as part of the St. George waterfront developments on a separate special permit, is located on Parcel 1. Adjacent to the Richmond County Ballpark and within walking distance of the ferry terminal. New York Wheel intends to retain all 820 spaces on site during the construction of the wheel and terminal building. While the lot at 22 Academy Place, which is one of the interim parking lots closest to the ferry terminal provided by the Empire Outlets applicant, would have 156 spaces. Both of these sites are within walking distance of the ferry terminal and will have attended parking, and these account for approximately 75% of the current peak commuter parking demand. The additional peak commuter parking demand of approximately 250 spaces could be accommodated entirely at 475 Bay Street, which will be the first of the interim lots to come online. So the applicant has explained that the majority of the peak demand for commuter parking, which can be accommodated within walking distance, and that a third lot would be able to accommodate the entire peak demand. Construction, they intend to allow for permitting of the parking lots closest to the ferry terminal and to give priority to commuters for those parking lots to ensure that the commute time, the travel time will be limited for commuters. Construction workers who are working on the sites will be required to get parking permits for the furthest lots so that they will not take the spaces that are closest to the ferry terminal. The efficiency of the operation was the primary motivation for the proposed changes. The introduction of the fifth parking lot will allow the applicant to rebalance the capacity of the lots and create a more even distribution, with the number one goal being to reduce vehicle stackers. In the final design of the sites and in discussion with operators, the applicant learned post-approval that the stackers would significantly reduce the efficiency of the sites. Limiting stackers and producing self-park options when available is key to their operational efficiency. Finally, regarding questions about costs and cost savings, the elimination of the stackers, the applicant estimates eliminating stackers would save approximately $26,000 a month, compared with the addition of approximately an estimated $25,000 a month in costs associated with the new sites. So there's so the questions that were raised at the previous review session is pretty much equivalent, and the operation of the site is what is driving the decision to seek the modification.
It's not quite equivalent. If I understand the letter, the savings is $25,000 a month, and the additional cost is a total of $26,000.
I believe it's $25,000 a month. I'll clarify, but it may be a typo in there because
Could you get that clarified?
Yeah,
Jen?
yeah. I'm quite sure that. I will certainly clarify that, but yes, I'm pretty sure it's $25,000 a month. So the proposed changes would require a modification to the interim parking plan, and we have asked the applicant to make those changes. Are there any further questions?
Ms. Besser.
Thank you. I know that both the borough president and the community board were concerned, they wanted additional shuttle service. So I'm happy to see that the applicant at least agreed to an additional shuttle and to keep an open dialogue with the borough president's office and monitor that as well.
Any other questions?
No.
Okay, could you just clarify the
Certainly.
cost savings and
Yeah.
costs and let us all know? I think this is coming back for probably a vote on August 4th, so thank you.
Thanks, Jen. So on this Wednesday, Commissioners, staff had prepared favorable resolutions for the following. The Grant Avenue demapping and park mapping, which will facilitate the establishment of parkland in the Bronx. We have 155 Mercer Street, which is a proposed special use permit to facilitate retail in the Soho Cast Iron Historic District. We have 24 Scranton Avenue in Staten Island, which is a proposed certification for future subdivision to facilitate residential development in the special South Richmond District. And we have the Veterans Road West Commercial Development, which involves proposed authorizations to facilitate a one-story commercial building in the special South Richmond Development District. And those are all on for vote this coming Wednesday. Proposed for August the 6th, we have the Irish Arts Center to facilitate a community facility use and expansion to a community garden in Clinton Hell's Kitchen, Manhattan. We had a very pleasant public hearing a couple of weeks ago, and staff is of the opinion that a favorable report would be okay. Great. And then the next item we have Edwin here to present some materials that you received in your package in response to some of the concerns that were raised in the public review process for 19 East Houston Street, which involves disposition of city-owned property and special permits to facilitate retail and office space use along 19 East Houston Street.
Good afternoon, Chairman Weisbrod. Good afternoon, Commissioners. We have forwarded correspondence and graphic materials to you that show a revised ground floor plan, loading zone on Crosby Street, and widened sidewalk on East Houston Street for this project. The correspondence memorialized the applicant's commitments in response to community board concerns, DOT commitments for Crosby Street and for East Houston Street, as well as underscore community board concerns for the project regarding signage transparency, as well as the RFP process. Now, regarding the ground floor plan, I want to direct the Commission's attention to the presentation board area. The applicant has revised the ground floor plan. This was the ground floor plan as certified by the Commission. This is the revised ground floor plan. As certified, the ground floor plan had a passenger elevator and a freight elevator located in a lobby which is accessed from Crosby Street. In the revised ground floor plan, the freight elevator has been placed within the store footprint, so goods are brought into the store and then brought into the freight elevator, which is located right here, which serves the retail space. This elevator serves the commercial office space, which is above the third floor in the proposed building. Also, the applicant has agreed to place a loading zone along Crosby Street. So again, this is Crosby Street. The applicant has agreed to place a loading zone which would basically comprise the entire building frontage along Crosby Street, which is about 66 feet or so. The applicant had proposed that the loading hours be from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. with parking allowed afterward, and also the applicant has committed to further restricting the loading hours as well. We have reached out to DOT on this issue, and we have suggested that signage be placed on Crosby Street stating that parking be allowed at night on Crosby Street, which would prevent truck loading at those times, and simply have truck loading and unloading from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, with regular parking permitted at other times. In response, DOT says that that's their intent, and they will have signage on Crosby Street to reflect that. Along East Houston Street, this is the East Houston Street frontage here. The sidewalk would be widened from 12.1 feet, which was certified, to 15 feet. So the sidewalk would be widened by 3 feet. The pedestrian clear path would be increased from 6.5 feet to 9.7 feet, almost 10 feet. The clear path would be right through here. Again, as certified, this was 6.5 feet. This is being widened to 9.7 feet. Also, you may notice that there is a layover lane located over here. This layover lane would be about 7 feet wide. In communication with DOT, it's their intention to keep this layover lane because they believe that it's the best way not to impede traffic flow on East Houston Street. That's traffic heading east. Also, the 3-foot sidewalk widening is the furthest that they could go. They cannot go any further than this point, without impeding traffic flow on East Houston Street. Also, DOT is considering opening up the median, which is located here. This is Crosby Street, this is East Houston Street. Right now you have a solid median. Crosby is one way heading north. This is north in this direction towards the floor. Right now, northbound traffic must make a right turn on East Houston Street heading east. DOT is exploring the possibility or the feasibility of punching this through, opening this up, allowing northbound traffic to either continue on Crosby Street or make a left turn and head west along East Houston Street. If that doesn't work, then they're committed to putting a pedestrian crosswalk here with the appropriate signalization to allow pedestrians to cross across this portion of East Houston Street. In terms of signage, as the Commission is aware, advertising signage is not permitted. This is a district that allows either residential use or joint living work quarters for artists by special permit, and accordingly, advertising signage is not allowed. Accessory business signs are allowed as per the C2 regulations, which allow illuminated signs up to 50 square feet per building frontage and 150 square feet non-illuminated per building frontage. The applicant is committed to having complying signage, the signage that complies with the C2 regulations, and they've indicated in their correspondence that they do not intend to have advertising signage on their property.
Questions for Edwin? Mr. Knuckles.
Edwin, could you just address the rendering that was a part of the attachments to the letter? Seems to be, which includes a nighttime view of Houston and Broadway, is somewhat different than the one we saw during the public hearing. Would you care to address, to the extent that you noticed them, of course, you care to address that?
Well, Chair Knuckles, Vice Chair Knuckles, you're absolutely right. It is different than what was shown at the public hearing. This is what was given to us as part of the package to share with you today. This is our understanding of what the building would look like at night. However, you'll notice that in the rendering that you have, appears to have retail space on the first 2 levels. The special permits call for retail on 3 levels. However, the signage complies with C2 regs, again, having much smaller signage than what's allowed if this were, were like a simple M15 district where residential uses are not permitted by special permit.
And the uses on the western edge of the building?
This is Broadway.
No, that's Broadway.
Right. This is Broadway. So this is a building that fronts on Broadway.
Right, I mean the western edge of the proposed project, the point, in other words. Yeah.
Yes, this is the thin edge of the wedge, and this building fronts on Broadway.
Right, so there's a little triangular space right amongst those, going right up the length of the building, I mean, right?
Right. A little triangular atrium. There are no floors in here. It's basically open space up to the top floor of the building.
Right.
These are windows of varying opacity. According to the applicant, you will not be able to see any signage along here. And this is basically very, very not not very, very transparent. As told to us, the applicant does not intend to put advertising signage back there.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Cantor?
Ed,
Yes.
the moving of the freight elevator, so the access to the elevator is through the store. So where are they going to unload?
They are going to unload on Crosby.
How are they going to unload on Crosby and get to the elevator without going to the...
They would have to go through the store. They would have to go through the store.
Is that a realistic?
Well, you know, the loading hours are before the store opens, you know, so they can have loading as early as 8 a.m. We propose that it begin at 7 a.m. So they could have the loading before the store opens, which is generally around 11 a.m. or so.
What hours do you reference the loading area? What hours do you reference?
We'll reference the applicant and DOT has agreed initially to 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. We recommended 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. With parking allowed all other times.
So therefore, there's parking all day?
There would be parking all day except for what we're proposing, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday.
In other words, on the 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., it would be just for loading, and at all other times, parking permitted.
So
Okay,
nighttime.
so therefore, the Crosby Street becomes one long loading dock.
Just that section,
But,
just that section during business hours.
yes, well, that whole run from the entrance to the office lobby to the point is becoming the loading dock, is becoming the loading area, if you will, or unloading area, I should say. And the entrance is the double doors going right through the ground, right into the ground floor of the retail.
Yes,
Is that accurate?
yes.
The retailer is going to look upon that favorably?
I'll leave that to the applicant. I'll get back to you on that, but the applicant has told us that that's not a problem.
It's not a problem today on paper, but I would be concerned about the ultimate ability of the retailer to accept something.
Well, if I recall, that's one of the reasons why, one of the arguments in favor of one store rather than two stores. So the applicant, yeah, so much of the loading and unloading, vast majority of the loading and unloading would be for the retailer itself.
The retailer's gonna have to carve out a car, and we're just gonna carve out a okay. Now, getting back to the point, you said that the applicant said that the space is unusable or won't be used.
What you have is,
That is an interesting question. Given that it's a landmark and we have a special permit, wondering if we could restrict
so
beyond.
basically, this is the point right here. From this point upward, this is all like an atrium, if you will. There are no floors here. This is just one large volume.
Restrict beyond.
So what about the darkened area?
The darkened area is part of that volume. So roughly from here to about here is open. You do not have floors going through to the point. The floors basically stop about here.
And the representation is further made by the applicant that there will be no signage that is going to pour out into the street.
That's what we're told, yes. Also, they cannot have billboards on this building as per the underlying zoning.
And who would enforce that? The applicant or his tenant were to regress?
Okay, within 18 inches of the window, it would be an LPC issue, because LPC would basically enforce anything up to 18 inches behind the window. Beyond that, that would be DOB.
Ms. Vitaglia.
Edwin, two questions. Starting with the sidewalk widening,
Yes,
3 feet.
yes.
With the street grading, does that result in a net loss of space on the sidewalk, even with the 3 feet? I thought I remembered, and forgive me, I inadvertently left my paperwork for this home. I thought I remembered that the grading itself was 4 feet wide.
The grading is 4 feet wide. However, as certified, the clear path was 6.5 feet. So what's happening is as the sidewalk is being widened, the gradings are being moved out. Okay, so the clear
So
path, the pedestrian clear path
Will
increases.
still be 6.5?
No, it'll be 9, it'll be almost
9
10 feet.
10 feet, yes, that's
Yeah,
right.
9
Yeah.
feet, 7 inches.
Right. So the second question, you had mentioned that, I'm going to rely on DOT to determine that loading along Crosby during those hours wouldn't impact traffic negatively, or impossibly negatively. But you had mentioned that perhaps they would, or they are considering or evaluating opening the median.
Yes.
So that traffic could go straight through.
Yes.
But if not, they would create signaling and crosswalk. There's no crosswalk there right now?
That's correct. There's no
And that's
crosswalk.
because pedestrians can't cross there? Cannot?
If they do, they would be jaywalking. But there aren't any, there's no pedestrian signal there right now. And there isn't a
Passageway.
passageway, right,
Thanks.
for pedestrian crossing.
Ms. Del Toro.
Just two questions, just to follow up again on that sliver. The developer is saying that they do not intend to have advertising there. That doesn't mean that they will not or cannot. So I'd love to have some clarification about that, you know.
I actually tried to see if counsel was available, which she isn't, but one question I have is whether our authority to, given the fact that this is a landmark coming here and a special permit, our authority to restrict what, beyond what zoning might otherwise permit, what happens in that sliver. And we'll try to get an answer for you well before this comes before you for a vote.
Because I think that the choice of language there is going to be very, very important. The other question I have is I haven't seen a drawing of the facade on Crosby, especially that's going to be the loading zone. How is that, the building from Crosby Street, the facade, what is it going to look like?
Okay, so this is it right here. Okay, you can see that it's architecturally sympathetic to the building right next door to it in terms of materials and the way the windows line up to the windows on the abutting building. This is East Houston Street, this is the East Houston frontage right here.
Okay, and the ground floor with the loading zone,
Right here, yes.
that's, all right. Okay, thanks.
Ms. Levin.
Thank you, Carl. I have a line of questions, but just to follow up on the chair's observation about seeking clarification of council on limitations of signage, I think Edwin has just referred to a number of descriptions that the applicant has given us about their intended signage. And I guess, depending on how the conversation with council comes out, I would ask the question, would the applicant be willing to commit to those conditions as part of this application? It's another way of getting at the same,
Indeed.
the same thing. The aspect of this application that's really been on my mind really has to do with the question of 2 floors of retail versus 3. Personally, I find myself very persuaded by the recommendations of the community board and the borough president that this is such a small and constrained site that 3 floors of retail creates an intensity of use there that is really problematic. So in the spirit of the question I just asked, I note that this rendering, or this nighttime rendering that we got shows only 2 floors of retail. And if that's what they're really going to build, I don't have to ask any more of my questions, but as you pointed out, they have asked for 3 floors. Does kind of make me wonder what else they're showing us that isn't exactly what they've applied for, but never mind that. So then, being the lawyer that I am, I focus, so the way you get to the 3 floors of retail is out of the permit for large retail.
Right.
And so then I go to look at the findings and say, oh, well, have they met these findings? And there's one of the findings where the community board and the applicant are making different arguments to us, and that's the A finding, which is about the principal vehicular access to the site. And in this case, of course, people aren't driving cars to this site. The closest we have to vehicular access is the loading area on Crosby. And the applicant in its letter tells us that there is no vehicular access to the site. And the community board says, well, that's vehicular access, so you shouldn't be able to grant the permit. The finding isn't met. The commission has approved a number of these large retail permits over the years. And I wonder if the precedent of those other applications sheds light on how we should interpret that A finding. Is a truck pulling up to a curb and unloading materials, has that in the past been considered vehicular access for purpose of these findings in this area?
That's a very good question. We looked at the special permit for the Adidas store, which is located right across the street. And that store, in terms of scale, is the same. It's 7 stories. It has about 65,000 square feet of retail space. It had a pre-existing 150-car parking garage, and it also had 2 loading berths. And the commission approved that project. And in making its decision, it found that for vehicle access, the loading and the parking, was not, on Crosby was not an issue, and that the project met the findings. The commission found at that time, and again, this project was approved in 2003, that primary vehicle access would be provided from Broadway and from Houston Street, and not from Crosby Street.
So, not considering the
Right.
loading aspect to be the kind of vehicular access that is covered by these findings.
That's correct.
Then, Carl, if you'd permit me, there's one additional thing I'd like to say about this application, which goes beyond what's immediately before us. But as part of this, the applicant is acquiring a site on 20th Street for relocation of the vehicles and equipment that the MTA is now storing at 19 East Houston Street. And a news report, at least, indicated that the purchase price for that site on 20th Street is $13 million. And I was surprised to look at the environmental assessment statement for this and discover that the MTA is only parking 4 trucks and some equipment on this site, and that's all that has to be relocated. Surely there has to be a more efficient way to solve the relocation problem than to shovel it all onto the private developer. And I would think that, far be it from me to try and save developers money, but $13 million and losing 29 licensed parking spaces, and 1 worker loses his job on 20th Street, all so that the MTA doesn't have to go solve its own problem, I think is really a misapplication of priorities here. And query what might be possible on this site to address the various community concerns that have arisen if the developer weren't also having to carry $13 million of cost to purchase the site on 20th Street. Again, as I said, this is not part of our application. I regret that it didn't come up as part of the public hearing, and I got on my soapbox just because I thought that it had to be publicly acknowledged that this is an aspect of this project. Should say in closing, I was also discouraged that the MTA couldn't come up with a better explanation for us about the adequacy of the improvements to the subway stair. The subway stair on Houston Street is indeed very constrained. But because we were hearing from the real estate people at MTA, they sort of said, oh, well, that's the developer's problem. Well, excuse me, but the MTA is an important agency here, and it would have been more reassuring to us if we could have heard from the MTA that they have looked at this design, and this is, in fact, a good solution to a difficult problem. I think we need to know that the work that the developer is, good for the developer for getting to work on this, and doubling the width of it sounds like it's a step in the right direction. It would be nice to have the MTA or the Transit Authority saying, we've worked this as hard as we can, and this is the best result you're going to get. Thank you.
Any other questions to Edwin? Thank you, Edwin. This is, I think, coming back here on August 6th, and we will try to get answers to the questions that many commissioners have raised well before then. Thanks. And with that, is there any other matter before us, Madam Secretary?
No, Chairman Weisbrod.
The session is closed. Thank you.